This here is the Powkiddy V10. Powkiddy's newest handheld, priced at just $40 US, shipped from them directly. It's also one of the very few devices to use a 3:2 aspect ratio screen, making it pixel perfect for Game Boy Advance games. For $40, there's a lot to like, so let's talk about it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be talking about the Powkiddy V10. This isn't going to be a long review by any stretch of the imagination, because there isn't a lot to talk about when it comes to this device. It is older in scope, and I mean that in a literal way. The internals of this device is the same as the internals in a device from 4 years ago, and that's the Anbernic RG351P. Main difference nowadays is that this is about a third of that price of what that launched at, which was near $100. This is $40 US. So that means that this has the RK3326 processor, tops out at around PS1 and under for performance, and it has a 3:2 aspect ratio screen, which is the same as the RG351P. But performance-wise, it's not just the RG351P. There is the R36S, there's the Anbernic RG351 line, so the others there's other Powkiddys, and then there's a whole whack of AliExpress devices that have the same performance as this. So it's kind of a known quantity at this point. You could find a whole bunch of devices like this. But the major difference with this compared to other devices, and maybe not all of them, but this is $40 shipped, brand new, all that sort of thing. And it only will get cheaper over time through AliExpress sales and all of that. So there's a big difference here. But that also means that this review just doesn't matter. I've learned one thing over the last year, and that's cheap devices like this, anything under $40, $50, doesn't matter what I say in the review. I could point out a million different issues. People will buy it, there will be a massive community, and it'll go on to be a success in that small community, because there's a whole bunch of people out there that will just shop for $40 and under devices and then try and make a community out of it, even if it isn't the best device out there. And I'm not saying that this isn't, I'm just generalizing. The Data Frog has screen tearing and it can't run Game Boy Advance games. R36S has a bunch of software issues and the D-pad and buttons are among the worst I've ever used. And so on and so on and so on. And there's other devices with communities like that and major issues, and it doesn't matter. But point being, one thing I've learned, under $40, I could tell you that there's a 1 in 5 chance that when you turn this on, it'll blow up your house. And somebody somewhere out there will be like, that's the device for me, I really want that. So again, this review doesn't matter what I say, but we'll talk about it anyways because content is content, I guess. I think what's surprising about this release specifically is that it actually uses the best parts out of any Powkiddy device that I've seen so far. The quality of this does not feel like a normal Powkiddy. This feels like it was made by somebody else that isn't Powkiddy and their usual crap. Let's put it that way. The D-pad is great, the buttons feel great, the device itself feels really good. I am surprised. If you didn't tell me this was Powkiddy, I would never have believed you. And then on top of that, it has great software with ArkOS, and there's no weird issues there at all. This might be the only $40 and under device that I can think of that doesn't have major deal breakers or issues or really anything like that. I mean, like I said before, Data Frog has screen tearing, R36S, the buttons, as well as the software with panels and all that sort of thing. But there's no massive deal breakers on the V10, which is interesting. The D-pad here is the best they've made by far, and there's no competition. It feels good to use. The buttons are the same. They're a joy to use here as well. And that goes for the shoulders and triggers too. They're solid and clicky, and it kind of just brings it all together that this is really well made. Leave it to Powkiddy to have their best made device be also their cheapest. Now, while we're kind of doing this tour, it's important to mention that there are no volume buttons, and instead, you're going to be using hotkeys to adjust volume in the operating system. I gotta say, no matter what price that you sell a device at, volume buttons should be a constant standard, and I don't like that it doesn't have them. It's also important to mention that there's no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, and no HDMI out. So this is kind of as bare bones as it comes. The speaker is front-facing, and it's better than you'd expect. And really, that's all there is to say about the build quality front. It's a very wide handheld, it's bigger than you'd expect, and it feels comfortable and good in your hands. It's both a vertical and a horizontal at the same time, in my opinion. Sort of a nice mashup of both. The V10 is running an older, out-of-date version of ArkOS out of the box. Thankfully, you can flash a fresh version of the newer ArkOS using the RGB10 image from their website, and I have a setup guide already out with that in mind. Also, if you own a USB Wi-Fi adapter, you can update that way as well. Point being, software-wise, we have the best option out there. I talked about it earlier, but this device's performance tops out at PS1 and under. And because of how many devices and how many years this chip has been out, we're not going to be doing a deep dive into this. I will say that as somebody who owns an RG351P already, and I used it a lot for Game Boy Advance, which honestly is really the only reason you'd buy a V10, there are some things you should know. First, you're going to want to use the GPSP core for Game Boy Advance games. The out-of-the-box core uses MGBA, and this processor can't run all Game Boy Advance games at full speed using MGBA. Notable examples is Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, but there's other games as well. But once you make that change, you can enjoy all of Game Boy Advance and have fun. Once again, thanks to the 3:2 aspect ratio screen, that's kind of the best part. However, I will say that I'm not a fan of the massive bezels. This might be the first device review where the bezels actually bothered me, and for the sole reason that it sort of removes the whole purpose of this device. The whole reason you're going to get this is because it has a 3:2 screen. That's it. That is the entire value proposition. But when you see how massive these bezels are, you're kind of like, I can just get another device with way less bezels and I'll have less bars than what this looks like. Kind of wish that they removed a lot of these bezels, and it would have made this a lot better of a 3:2 device to me, because it just kind of doesn't feel that way with these. Look, in a vacuum, if no other handhelds existed, this would be awesome. $40, you get this and it all works and perfect. That's awesome. But we're not really in that vacuum, are we? Because we've seen a lot of AliExpress sales where we can get in that $40 range the Anbernic RG35XXH, the Plus, the Miu Mini Plus is there, the TrimUI Smart Pro is $46 US. So you're paying maybe $10 more for that over this and a whole bunch more. So there's a bunch of different options in that price point where this lives that if you're going to save $10 to get this, you're kind of giving up a lot. But the main difference obviously being that AliExpress sales are not constant. You have to wait for them. You have to get it. You might not be in the region for where it is. So this is a constant $40 US. You can buy it any day you want, anytime you want, and you can get it. So I think that's the main difference. But I think if you're a price conscious shopper, you're probably going to want the best deal. And this isn't the best deal. It's just the cheapest, most consistent. And so in my mind, I don't know who this might be for exactly outside of collectors. Any other device that you would have purchased in the last 4 years is probably faster than this and has better specs and all that sort of thing. So it kind of leaves you wondering, is this kind of just a stocking stuffer device? And maybe that's the case, and maybe that's the right way to look at it. But I'm not going to say it's a good financial decision, or not going to say it's the best choice you can make. I don't know. Maybe you let me know in the comments below what I'm missing here, because usually what happens in these scenarios is somebody's like, it's $40, I can't even go to McDonald's for $40. And I get that, but if you spent $10 more, you get something 10 times better, if you understand what I mean. I mean, look, if you had an Anbernic RG351P and you still have it, that's better than this. It's the same thing, but better than this, and that's been out for 4 years. So that's kind of my point, is that this is awesome at $40. There's a lot to like here and all that sort of thing, but also I feel like $40 isn't special anymore when you know about how many other devices are in that price range nowadays. But let's wrap it up, because again, this review video doesn't matter for a device like this that's this cheap. So if you're going to buy it, buy it. There's nothing here that I saw as a deal breaker. seems good. If you're not going to buy it, don't buy it. That's all I got for you today. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord and yell at me for not calling this a budget king or whatever they're calling it nowadays. Support me on Patreon if you like my videos. And hope you all have a good one.